And Hester is going to run it out past the 40 into Giants territory. He is going to go all the way. Touchdown, Chicago.
Trying to find somebody open and throws an interception. And it's Charles Woodson's 55th of his career.
Dives for the touchdown, San Francisco.
I want to play desperately, and I'm going to try to drive everyone nuts till they give me a shot.
Favre threw an almost impossible 336 career interceptions.
See that?
Yeah. We have here the Brett Favre interceptions calendar.
It's the lovable kicking bear doll. And guess what? It comes with its own goalpost. Isn't that neat?
Double doink.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Cut the Cheese, Poke the Bear, and Roast the Niner. I am Urza Master. Joining me as always, Gold Rush and Lord Uther. Fellas, welcome back to this NFL-based podcast of ours. We are through week 1 of the 2024 season. We have seen some odd games and just a million yellow flags on the field. I don't know if I've ever seen so many illegal formation flags in my life. This might have already exceeded in my lifetime the number of illegal formation flags I've ever seen in 1 week of football. We've seen injuries. We've seen terrible field conditions. I'm looking at you, Sao Paulo. We've seen gimmicks play out. And we've seen a lot of this new kickoff rule. And I kind of want to start there because I was highly suspect of this kickoff rule when we kicked off the regular season talk back a couple months ago when they changed this. I didn't think it was going to work out. I didn't think it was going to last through preseason. Science tells us that by changing this one play, it eliminates a huge number of injuries, which of course is great, and we want to make football safer. I was really thinking it's going to take some element away from the game, and then I got to thinking, how many actual returns did we see last year? And of course, that statistic's out there. I think it was the lowest number ever last year, mostly coming out to the 25. So, gentlemen, what did you guys think of the week 1 kickoff scenario? And then we'll move on to other topics, but this is kind of the big one for this year. How do you feel about it?
Oh. I think it's better than kicking out of the end zone every time. And it's nice that the XFL could contribute something to real football. I think it does add a little bit of a dynamic to it, right? It's going to be returned, at least it puts the ball in play. And you obviously don't have the guys making these tackles coming in at a crazy high rate of speed, right? They're probably not reaching their maximum velocity in a sense when they're going in there to make that hit on that tackle. Maybe that's what's reducing or could reduce some injuries as well. So at least we're getting a little bit of play out of the ball. It's not getting kicked out of the end zone every single time. I don't mind it. Could there be a better solution? I don't know. Let's see what the season brings in the long run. I'm trying to figure out if I'm just such an old man that I prefer the old ways of kicking off. But then again, these guys can kick the ball farther than ever before. I mean, that's very evident too. So how much would the ball really be put in place? I think a lot of that is a part of this. I remember at one time I thought there was some discussion of just giving each, like there would be no more kickoffs, and you would just get the ball at like the 25 or the 30 or something. I know there had been some discussion about that at one point, and I didn't like that idea either. So, if it keeps it safer and we have less bad injuries from it, at least, again, like I said, at least the ball's in play. So, Gold Rush.
Very rarely will I cite a Dallas Cowboy player, speaking as a San Francisco 49er lifelong fan. But consider this week 1 with Brandon Aubrey and his Cowboys were facing the Browns. Near the end of the first half of that game, he lined up to take a 63-yard field goal, which the Browns called timeout just as the ball was snapped. but they went through with the play. And he nailed it with a good 10 yards to spare from 63. Or you know what? It actually might have been a penalty because they tried it again, and he was trying a 74-yard field goal. And ultimately didn't hit. But the fact that they think his leg is strong enough to even attempt something that crazy tells you all you need to know about, like you say, NFL kickers and so forth. I don't know. I might have a completely different perspective from you two. I was watching the Red Zone all weekend, and I was not seeing, like, I was seeing a lot of placing the ball at the 35. I wasn't seeing the dynamic kick returns again, week one. But they have this landing zone, and I just didn't get the sense that these kickers were, I mean, they were just knocking the stitches off the ball, and the teams were just content to take it at the 35. I believe the XFL's rule, if I remember it correctly, was you had to return it. Like, it didn't matter if they kicked it 20 yards into the end zone, you had to run it out. Now, that was the Vince McMahon, anything goes, wild, wild west of football. I get it that we have to consider player safety and so forth like that. But, I mean, they are going at top speed on punt returns. I mean, granted, we're seeing an extraordinary number of fair catches. But, I mean, you're more likely with any of these new rules to spring something on a botched punt coverage. You know, you get it and make the first couple of guys miss and suddenly you're up the sidelines. Then you are just a straight direct kickoff. And, I mean, if a team's kicking off, presumably, you know, beyond to open the first and third quarters, it's because they've just scored. So that's going to dictate, do I want Brandon Aubrey to boom it out the back of the end zone, or do I want him to try something a little bit more finesse and a little bit more targeted? But again, if you miss and then it goes out of bounds, then you're penalized. So it is strange. I mean, we grew up watching a certain brand of football. Football, the game has evolved, obviously, with, you know, concerns as players get bigger, stronger, faster, and so forth, and with injuries and long-term health conditions exploring that. So, you know, I'm taking it with an open mind. But I would, if we're going to do this, then I would like to see more teams try to put on a sense of return. Because, yeah, to Urza Master's point last year, I mean, record lows. Nobody was returning the ball, and you were taking a whole element of the game out, really. Special teams is, you know, a factor in the game. I mean, and, you know, when I talk about the Niners' week one performance, it was one of the key components to them winning. So, I don't want to see that just as Lord Uther said, you know, automatic spot at the 35, you know, first down. There's something dramatic if you can get past that first wave of tacklers, and even if you can, you know, forget taking it all the way to the house, but even if you can get 40 or 50 yards, you know, put your team on the other side of the 50 with a first down, then suddenly in front of the home crowd, and they're roaring, and the defense can't hear their signals because it's so loud. That's the kind of football we all love to see.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We definitely grew up with a different brand of football. I remember the hard hits and the full speed ahead, you know, rough tackles where there's an element of violence to the game that was, I don't know, kind of macho and intoxicating in a way where you're like, oh man, like you get that aggression out on the field that there was something to it, you know. But I think of guys like Chuck Cecil, who played for Green Bay, you know, you watch his old highlight reels. I mean, he was breaking ribs, you know, driving people to the ground. They have several rules on the books because of how he played football, just to keep them from killing each other out there. I was highly skeptical. I actually ended up liking it because I saw a few dynamic returns, and they were good. I thought it made it a little more dangerous, a little more competitive for good returners, which is always exciting. But I also saw some boneheaded returns with my beloved Packers, and I got to take a minute to call out Jair Alexander. He's a good player, and I don't want to take anything away from him. Love the guy. I hope he has a great season, but he's got to drop his ego and earn it again, because he brought out an interception that he should have absolutely taken a knee on for no reason. He screwed us for about 10, 15 yards by bringing it out of the end zone. We had a kick return that we brought out of the end zone, even though it was like 6 yards deep, for no reason. We ended up at like the 12-yard line. And we were playing on a field in Sao Paulo that, look, I know there's a lot of big NFL numbers in terms of fans down there, and I want to see games played internationally. I might be one of the few that thinks that's a great idea, but they need to vet these fields. I'll never forget a few years back, all excited for the Hall of Fame game. Brett Favre gave a speech before it, and he was like, "Oh, I hope Kevin Green lets me get out and play a little bit." And I was thinking, hell, they might actually do it. It's a Hall of Fame game. It didn't mean nothing. And then he didn't play because the paint on the field was wrong. And was hazardous to the players. So if that's the kind of thing that can keep a team from playing a game, you'd think that slippery-ass field they were playing on, where everybody pulled every leg muscle they could, would have been something they would have vetted a little bit. But, pot shot at the NFL here, what's with the money grab? They're trying to make the game safer, but at the same time, they're going after the dollars out there in these international venues that barely get vetted. Now, granted, London, Berlin, some of those venues, they played at a number of times. By now, they're probably all right. But we still have teams with artificial turf out there. I look at, they don't call it the Meadowlands anymore, but the current Jets arena that they play in. MetLife is just a garbage field to play on. Like, so many injuries happen on that field on both sides, home and away. They do nothing about it. I mean, the NFL should be stepping in here, or the NFLPA needs to put a strike together and say, we're not going to play in these dangerous field conditions. Guys are having their careers changed by this. I mean, luckily, Jordan Love's probably going to be okay. He might even play this weekend, they're saying, which, if he's ready to go, I'm a Favre fan. Let him play. But I also want to see him play a lot of years. So, there's a little bit of that too. But, I mean, I've seen guys like Aaron Rodgers' whole season was ended because of that field last year. 3 plays into his Jets career. Done. And it's 100% the field. Because the guy's a 16-year vet. He didn't go out there and do stupid things with his body anymore. He'd been playing that long. He's been injured before. Like, it's not a freak accident. It's not the first time an ACL's gone out on that field. As a matter of fact, there were more injuries in that game. So, how do you guys feel about the state of, all this player safety talk, but they're not doing anything about these fields or foreign venues?
Yeah, I mean, I hear you on the money grab part. Think about Soldier Field and how much that has been an issue for such a long time, and probably will be once the weather turns and they get a bunch of rain or a bunch of snow and they have to change their cleats out all the time and all that kind of stuff. But then again, I'm not a huge turf fan. Seen obviously lots of issues with that as well. Like I messaged you guys over the weekend and said, though I'm not a big fan of CTE, obviously, man, I love me some Sunday NFL football. I don't know, it makes... Here, let me give you a quick comparison. I can understand the NBA wanting to go overseas. That is more of a game that can start appealing to players from other countries, and they can actually play the game there and get better and want to come here and play. I don't see that happening with the NFL. It's like we have American football and then everyone else has football. Just like our players won't be able to go play football and have an impact somewhere else, or very, 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 very few will. Same thing with players from other countries coming here to play football, unless you're a rugby player. And I even think rugby players that have tried to make the transition in the NFL, it hasn't always worked. You've got to be ingrained in that system for a long time. So play overseas to make a couple more bucks, or just keep it here and try and keep people safe. And these owners make so much money, you can't invest in a stadium that's going to be safe for everyone involved. There's got to be a way to make that work. So that's kind of my quick take on that.
And to Urza Master's point, I mean, Aaron Rodgers, that's the home stadium. He's got to play 8 games there, by default. All it takes is one or two of those to a star player or even a key backup. Nick Bosa tore it up at MetLife a couple of seasons ago. And I don't remember if it was season ending or he was out 8 weeks or whatever. But that can change an entire franchise's year. If your top edge rusher suddenly is out, and then you're not getting pressure on the quarterback to be successful so that your linebackers and corners and safeties can do their thing. So, I mean, you shrug, and maybe there's, statistic to say exactly how many, Achilles, MCLs, wherever it is. And maybe that number on a whole isn't necessarily a large sample size. But like I said, when Aaron Rodgers goes down 3-4 plays into the season last year, I mean, whatever the Jets were hoping to do, they weren't going to do it with Zach Wilson. And the 7-10 record is a reflection of their defense far more than anything that the offensive side of the ball was, which is the perfect transition to week 1, when those Jets with Mr. Rodgers back in his old neighborhood there, the Bay Area, brought Gang Green to a Monday night showdown, a showdown that I unfortunately was not able to view thanks to a nasty carriage dispute between a major Hollywood studio and a satellite provider who will remain unnamed. But I did listen to it on the radio. So it was kind of like this old school, like back in the 1940s, like, 3rd down and 4, ball was snapped, pressure. And so that there was a little bit of like old school entertainment value, I suppose, there. What did I hear? I heard a pretty solid game. The Niners allowed a late touchdown to make the score look a little bit closer than it ended up being. Brock Purdy, solid, 19 of 29, 231 yards, no touchdowns, but also no turnovers. So played a clean game. No Christian McCaffrey, a little bit of calf tightness and Achilles tendonitis, no problem. Just plug in undrafted Jordan Mason from Georgia Tech. Give him the ball 28 times for $147 and 1 touchdown. And then run Debo. Why not? Call 8 plays for running for him. He gets 23 yards and a touchdown in the red zone. None of the Niners receivers scored touchdowns. Brandon Ayuk dropped a sure dime in the corner of the end zone near the end of the first half. But they all turned in what they needed to. Juwan Jennings, 5 catches, 64 yards. Debo, 5 catches, 54 yards. George Kittle, 4 catches, 40 yards. Ayuk ended up with 2 catches for 28 yards, and afterwards admitted he felt the rust. So early part of the season will be getting him back there. On the defensive side of the ball, the Niners were +2 for turnovers, 1 interception, 1 fumble recovery. Fred Warner is a beast. And gentlemen, we've all seen stellar linebacker play from our various teams we represent, whether it was, Mike Singletary or Patrick Willis for the Niners or so forth. But Fred Warner is a beast, had 7 tackles, and he makes that defense go. Like, he needs to be on the field every defensive snap, not because it's just his job, but because that's what everyone feeds off of, and that's how you make those big plays on 3rd and 4, and you force them to take the punt. So, and Nick Bosa had 2 tackles and some pressures. Overall, again, for a team that had a tumultuous offseason with holdouts and their number 1 draft pick, first-round draft pick, getting shot the week before the game, and all of that, and the Super Bowl hangover, losing again to the Chiefs. They came out and played like one of the better teams in the NFC. You know, you can look at the Detroit Lions, you can look at the Eagles, you can look at several squads, Dallas, that want to make that statement. But the Niners are no better or no worse than any true contenders after week 1. And if they stay healthy and focused, then they're going to be right there in the conversation. I guarantee it. They are taking week 2 against the 1-0 Minnesota Vikings, who just pummeled the poor New York Giants. I say poor not because I feel sorry for them, but because they're foolish in thinking that Daniel Jones was worth any amount of money that they signed him to. The team was lustily booed at halftime, in the third quarter, and leaving the field. So it's really not a good measuring stick for the Vikings. How good or bad were they? 28-6 on the road in New York. They will be at home. Sam Darnold, who was the backup quarterback to Brock Purdy last season during the Super Bowl run, he will be under center. He had 208 yards. He had 2 TDs and 1 pick. Aaron Jones ran 14 times for 94 yards and a touchdown. And Justin Jefferson, who you cannot stop, you can only hope to contain, he had 4 catches for 59 yards and a touchdown. So at least for a week against a demonstratively inferior opponent, the Vikings look like they want to play in the NFC North with the Bears and the Lions and the Packers. Again, we'll see how that goes. They really weren't tested defensively by the Giants' inept offense, so we'll see. Christian McCaffrey is a long shot. I don't think, especially with the next 2 games on turf in Minnesota and at SoFi Stadium with the Rams in week 3, I don't know that they want to expose a sore calf or Achilles to that, especially with the kind of punishing runs CMC is known for and the punishment he likes to dish out. So, I mean, Jordan Mason probably won't give you 28 carries and 147 again this week, but if he gives you 94 and some first downs and maybe a touchdown in the red zone and maybe even a receiving out of the backfield, little screen there and busted up the sideline, I'm sure they'll be more than happy with it. So I'm going to give the Niners a grade later on in the broadcast, but very pleased with week 1.
Worst signing, Jones or Cousins?
Ooh,
Cousins.
yeah. Look, how bad did he look in Atlanta? They gifted
Horrible.
Oh,
Horrible in Atlanta.
yeah.
I think it's a toss-up. I mean, it's pretty close, but yeah, Cousins is definitely in some trouble. But that was my first thought. Was like, who's worse? I mean, I might even throw Dak Prescott in there just because of the amount of money that they spent on him. Did they really need to do that?
No.
And that's, well, yeah.
That's,
I mean,
that's a simple answer. That was a waste. And I know he had a good game. It's going to come back to bite him. They're the Cowboys. Of course it's going to come back to bite
I
him.
haven't looked at his postseason
Mike McCarthy's
record.
coaching him.
I know he hasn't got the big prize, obviously, but I don't even know what his postseason record is over. I mean, how many division games has he blown, or not him personally, but how many times has he struggled? The resume does not match the money, and if they're paying him for what he has already done for the Cowboys, that's where you shrug your shoulders and say, so what is that exactly, Jerry Jones? Because he hasn't gotten you an NFC title championship into the Super Bowl. He hasn't gotten you the Vince Lombardi trophy. So if you're paying him for past performance, because that's what they say sometimes with athletes, they have a breakout year, or they, do that. And so we're paying him for what he did as well as, keeping him on the roster. I just don't see the value yet. So who knows? Maybe it's a new Dak. Maybe he'll feel that pressure. A lot of athletes don't, though. A lot of athletes think, like, I got to go out and perform. And that's when you get tight and throw that pick, think you can beat double coverage, don't see that safety creeping over. So
I'm going to go next year because I'm struggling. I'm going to keep it simple. I remember growing up, I had a poster of the Bears offensive line in my bedroom because they were that dominant, and they did keep McMahon mostly healthy, right? So here I am sick as a dog on Sunday. Slept through some of the game, admittedly, just because I was taking cold medicine like I just took a little while ago. But every time I was coming out of my little comatose, Caleb Williams is running for his life. You can sign the greatest wide receivers in the world. You can sign the greatest running back. You can have a QB who has potential. But if the guy is running for his life, again, that's not good. And when you're down 17-0 and your defense, again, and your special teams, again, this broken record for Bears football for 20-plus years, bails them out, and you're happy about that win, you're stupid. Sorry, you're stupid. If you're happy about that, you don't know sports. You shouldn't watch football. I mean, hey, great job, Caleb Williams. You're 1-0 as a rookie. It's like the first time in 16 years. Whatever. And he manned up. He's like, I didn't play that well, all these other things. I would like to see what he could do if he actually had time to throw the ball and wasn't, like, again, running, say what you want about Justin Fields and Mitch. Those guys, they never had time to throw the ball. They just didn't. I mean, that doesn't mean that they were going to be any better, even if they did have some time. But when your mentality starts becoming, I need to run, or I'm going to try and spin out, like he had a 19-yard loss at one point. Then it was like 3rd and 29 or something, 2nd and 29, because he's trying to run away from a defensive tackle that wants to rip his head off. He's trying to make a play because I think that's the kind of guy he is. But you're not giving him an opportunity to throw the wide receivers finally who can, like, you have multiple threats. It's not like they're just going to key on DJ Moore all the time. You've got Cole Kmet. You've got the cold medicine's kicking in. Keenan Allen, right? Right? You have Odunze too. I mean, you've got people you can actually do something with, and it's not happening. Your defense had to bail you out again, dude. Come on. And what the obsession is with, I don't know if it's totally an Eberflus thing. I'm not a fan. I'm not a big fan of his presence. Maybe I got too much dick that is coursing through my veins like a lot of, I'm not a fan of the guy. So here we are, Mike Ditka, Ultimate Football. Comes with free Polish sausages and old styles. It's the Chicago way.
Chicago way.
It's the Chicago way. They've got the Texans. The Texans are favored by 6.5, and I think that is that's a fair line. I think they lose this weekend. Maybe I'm getting ahead of what we're going to talk about, but I'm so irate and full of cough medicine right now that I'm just throwing it out there. They take the L this weekend. And not that I want to see that, but if you continue to rely on the defense, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. So that's where I'm at with that.
All it takes is a tired defense. And I think, unfortunately, that's what happened to my Packers in Brazil. Between the field conditions and a tired defense, it was a good match. That game, if it was played in Philadelphia, would have been an absolute barn burner. It would have been a great game. Even if we lost, it would have been a great game to watch. Now, it was still a good game. But the whole game, both teams were slipping, sliding, getting hurt, straining calves. I mean, they had a trainer on Jordan Love the entire game working out his calves because they were tight because of the field conditions. And granted, Lambeau Field conditions are notorious for being tough. But that being said, even if the Packers were a little more comfortable than the Eagles were out there because they're used to real grass instead of turf, and less than ideal field conditions aren't a stranger to them, this was a dangerous field. This was a money grab by the NFL, and it resulted in, I think, potential risk to these players, and I would not be shocked if the NFLPA files some sort of grievance. Now, granted, I think Jordan Love's going to be okay. But these are the types of things that make it hard to watch football. I know for a fact if they played in Philadelphia, it was probably not as close of a game if we played the same way, and we probably would have lost by a bigger margin. I'm okay with that. I also think we could have won in Philadelphia, frankly, because I think we would have been a little more used to those field conditions. We would have been a little more comfortable. They actually booked the hotels differently. The Eagles, since they needed a quote-unquote home field advantage, were like booked right next to the stadium, so they got right there, no traffic. They were able to sleep in, get some extra rest. Packers had to wake up several hours earlier because they were a couple hours from the stadium with traffic. I'm going to just put it out there that that's kind of bogus. Home field advantage really has nothing to do with where your hotel is at. The team's going to book the closest hotel so they can get there early no matter what. So I think it's bogus. The real home field advantage is your fans. And if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, the refs. Now, granted, I also think that the rule changes this year I'm not a huge fan of. The illegal formations thing made these games so much longer. And I get that they wanted to clip the wing position lineup, and they wanted to make it a little more fair for the defense. I didn't see a problem with that formation. I don't think that it ever was so heavily weighted in favor one side or the other. But I'm not against the requirement of a lineup in certain relation to the center. I'm okay with that. But at the same time, like, I don't think anybody was getting a huge advantage by being, half a knee behind that. To me, that seems a little nitpicky, a little ticky-tacky. There were also some bad calls in this game, which it's week one. I expect that. But, I'm not going to sit here and blame the refs. We got outplayed, and not by a lot. It was a tight game. It was a good game. I don't hate it. I will take that loss. I'm proud of how we played. I really hope that Malik Willis does good if he starts. I'd rather have Jordan Love starting because Malik did not look good at the end of the game. But it was a great game. And props to the Philadelphia Eagles. They're a great team. They're going to be a contender, as always, this year. I have a feeling that division is probably theirs again. I don't see Dallas doing much to challenge them on that. Certainly New York has plenty of issues. But you look at the Niners, they're going to be contenders. The Eagles will be contenders. The NFC North is a little bit more in question because I think you got some unknowns. I think the Bears defense looks good. I think the quarterback situation is concerning, and I agree it's the offensive line. Similar to what the Vikings have been dealing with for years now, their line sucks. Now the Vikings line looked okay in their debut. I would not use the Giants as a benchmark to measure how successful they're going to be. I think they're going to have a lot harder time with San Francisco, and frankly, I think it's going to be a blowout in the Dome or U.S. Bank. I think the Vikings are going to get a lot of humble pie served their way this weekend because the Niners looked, frankly, unstoppable. And they were playing a good team, in my opinion. So, the Jets, look, I'm not going to say Aaron Rodgers is playing like he lost a step. I think he played well, but they played hard. And I do think that the 49ers are just that legit. This week, we got the Colts coming to Lambeau. I think it's a good game. It's going to depend on who starts at quarterback, how good of a game it is for us Packer fans. If Malik starts, I think it's a toss-up. If Jordan starts, even if he's not 100%, I think we win the game. I think it's going to be closer than it probably should be because of the injury. I also question our running back situation. I think getting rid of Aaron Jones was a mistake. I like our young guys, but I'm a little sick of us dumping a bunch of money on people that aren't producing. We did that with Bakhtiari, and we're still eating dead cap money there. To be quite honest, I'm skeptical of where our offense sits. I think our defense and special teams looked great. I think they're going to have a stellar year. I think our receiving core is good. I'm a little upset with Daub's dropping passes, but I blame that on the field conditions. I want to see a real test. But without Jordan Love, it's going to be tough. And if he's out a couple of weeks, I don't know that I rely on Malik. I would rather see Sean Clifford starting. I know there's been talk about picking up some veteran here or there. Don't do it. Don't waste the money. Ryan Tannehill's name's been floated out there. I like Ryan Tannehill, but he's not Vinny. I'm not pulling in anybody unless we get a Vinny Testaverde caliber quarterback that's sitting on a bench somewhere or hanging out in a practice squad just looking for a few bucks.
You don't want Joe Flacco
No.
showing up?
I don't want Joe Flacco. He's not Vinny.
He's like
Nobody's going to be
109.
Vinny again. I don't know that there's a quarterback out there that I would pop for right now. I'm going to wait until we get close to that trade deadline and we see some roster cuts because I think there are guys sitting on benches at backup positions that might be worthwhile. But there's no great journeyman quarterback that can step in like a Jeff Garcia or a Vinny Testaverde and win you a few games. I just don't think they're out there anymore.
But after Tom Brady's performance in the booth, maybe he wears that Packer green. I mean, you've had McMahon and Tom, Zach. Why wouldn't you want Tom Brady?
Yeah, to be honest, I'd take Brady. I think he'd come back for a decent paycheck to play for the Packers. I think that's the one franchise that has a realistic shot with him at quarterback. That being said, he's getting paid stupid money to do announcing. Why would you ever give that up? Also, I think he did a good job. I liked his commentary. It wasn't great, but it was like a young Tony Romo commentary, and I appreciated his insight. I enjoyed it.
It was better than Joe Montana doing Notre Dame games in the late 80s, and Lord Uther can remember that. It didn't go very long.
Tough call. All right, there, Gold Rush. Take us out with your prediction for your team for the week.
I don't want to sound cocky or overconfident. Last year, the Niners went in following a disappointing loss to Cleveland, and Minnesota, Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins had the half of their lives, and the Niners dropped a second game in a row on Monday Night Football. So they're very easily, it's a 10 a.m. start, Bay Area time, for the team. You're still dealing with, is Christian going to play, not going to play? I'm going to go out and say he's not. So look for more Jordan. There's no reason not to try to, run that horse again. I like the Niners to win, but I think much like the first drive or the third drive of the Jets game where the Jets actually briefly took the lead on the Niners 7-3, I think it's going to be one of those games. I think the Niners are going to find themselves down in this, maybe by a field goal, maybe by a touchdown, and are going to have to kind of play with that sense of urgency. But at the end of the day, I think, whether the score's 23-20 or, 26-19, or, if it's a good day at the office, 31-10, I think San Francisco prevails. I don't know. I think they'll let Jefferson get his, and I think they'll put the clamps down on the running game and harass Sam Darnold. Again, it's Sam Darnold. We all know who he is. Carolina, the Jets, USC. I just have a feeling, he'll make some connections with Justin Jefferson, but I don't know that he'll be lights out. We'll see. We can't take him lightly.
Oh wait, Bears lose? All right. I'm gonna go. I'll give you a quick. I'm gonna go. Texans 21, Bears 14. So that 6.5. So I'll give them the 7.
Fair enough. And I'm going to take the Packers. Again, I think it depends on who starts. If Malik starts, if it's going to be a lot closer. If Love starts, it's going to be a little further apart. But I'm going to take the Packers narrowly, 24-21. I think the Colts are going to come on hot late, and our defense is going to save us. Not to echo the Bears, but I think that's our situation right now with Love being questionable. I do want to have us all pick one additional game this week, and this is something we don't normally do, but I think there's an interesting matchup out here with two historically bad teams over the last few years. Although I will say the Commanders looked better last week. But what about the Giants at the Commanders this week? What do you guys have on that, and why?
Commanders, Giants are awful. Giants are awful. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Commanders on that one.
If it was Commanders on the road, I think they would probably, we just have two inept teams flailing about like seals on a beach. Because it is at home, because there's a new feel, getting rid of Dan Snyder, new ownership, like I think that sense of optimism. I think it'll be a sloppy game. I think there'll be penalties, there'll be, miscues, there'll be a missed special teams field goal or something along those lines. So don't look for like edifying football. But I think the Commanders at home, like just to try and say we're turning the page, this could be a 13-10, or even, that's giving the Giants 10 points. This could be 13-0. But I don't think New York has shown, if they can play that poorly after an off season in front of the home fans and just basically generate nothing, I trust zero that they're going to go out on the road against a division rival and somehow discover the secret sauce.
And I'm going to go with the division games always get played different, and I think we're going to see a rare Giants victory over the Commanders. I'm going to pick the underdog here. I don't know what the line is on this game, but I'm going to give it to the Giants.
1.5.
Is it 1.5 really?
Yeah.
I'm going to give it to the Giants 31-24. I think it's going to be a sloppy affair, but it's going to be higher scoring than anybody expects because there's going to be mistakes and turnovers. And the defense on each side is going to capitalize at least once. I'm going to take the Giants in a sleeper pick for the week. But football fans, we're going to be doing this every week now. We have signed on here at Pending Rebrand. We're not endorsed by the NFL, but they should call us because we have great ideas, just like Paramount, just like Disney have reached out to us for our other shows. NFL, we want you here in our football crew. And until next week, we and you should be ready for football at Pending Rebrand. Click subscribe, give us a like and share, and we will see you next week.